This is part 4 of the Air Force vs. Coast Guard video series. Please, if you haven't already seen part 1, definitely want to go back and check that out and see from the beginning of Coast Guard and Air Force boot camp and kind of where we have gotten to this part in part 4. So please, if you haven't done that, check the description box or a little link somewhere over here. I don't know which side, but click that and check out the beginning of the series. Talk to you guys soon. So let's say a person wants to join the military to, for the benefits, for the education. Which service would you say would be more conducive to that?
If you're just joining for the benefits, I would say DoD. But with that, you're going to have to understand the mental capacity that comes with that. Like it's a very different beast in that aspect of like command structure. Coast Guard I've seen is a little bit more laid back in that aspect, which makes the community a little bit better. But at the same time, you wouldn't be striving for more in that aspect. So it's a catch-22. But if you're going straight for the benefits, go DoD.
Go DoD. And
DoD.
now with the Coast Guard, obviously depending on your unit, if you're on a cutter, it can be a little bit more challenging, but you still have some time, not as much, but for education and for having time off and stuff like that, which service, or would you say that the Air Force or Coast Guard is a little bit better for being able to enjoy your time? Like for Coast Guard, when you get off of work, if you're at a station or if you're at a like a Monday through Friday type job, like at a sector, that time off of work, whether you go home or during your weekends, you can kind of enjoy that time, do college, do whatever you want. Which service would you say is more conducive to your time off and your personal enjoyment?
So that experience will vary. I've seen it good and bad on both sides. But I mean, they're pretty even. You want to take time off, you go through the proper channels, you can get it. It really depends on where you're working. I mean, I know like stations, if you have too many people taking leave, you can't take leave. I mean, they try to get you, like they try to say like, hey, we'll hold back other people's, like once you get it in that line of like people taking leave, once you put in for it, they're pretty good at keeping it. Air Force, same way. I don't really think there's that much of a difference. It's really, again, comes down to the needs of the service.
Do you think that it's easier to stay in the service? Because like one of the things that I know that a lot of people have to worry about is like that there is a cut in the total amount of jobs that are available in the different services. So they might start dropping people. We actually have a guy who transferred from the Navy, and he was dropped from the Navy. He was a flight mechanic. He was dropped from the Navy just because they said we have enough Navy mechanic or Navy flight mechanics, so we're just gonna cut you. And so he ended up joining the Coast Guard. Is that something that is pretty prevalent in the Air Force?
Absolutely. It's very competitive. Like I said, Air Force, they want you to keep going to college and everything. So like when it comes time to like cut people because they have too many, because sometimes that happens, they'll get too many. They'll have new ones coming in and they're like, oh, we got to start cutting. They'll go down the list. If you're not excelling, they'll cut you. So it's very, very competitive in that aspect. And it's not like you're going to get stabbed in the back all the time. No, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, if you're going to college, if you're proving yourself, if you're doing volunteer work, like all of this comes into play, they will keep you, but you have to work and prove that you want to be there. So yeah, there is that fear is there.
Yeah, that is something to definitely consider. Would you say that joining the Air Force, like if you just kind of wanted to coast through your Air Force career, that's something that you can't really do? You always have to be moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. There's real no time for coasting. I mean, you may have a little bit of downtime here and there, but for the most part, no. It's very keep going.
And what about like job location? Let's say you wanted to be in a particular area. Is there any way that you can do that in the Air Force, or is it kind of like wherever they say you go, you go? Like in the Coast Guard, you have a little bit more flexibility with what type of jobs you could choose to do or where you could choose to go. What is that structure like with the Air Force versus Coast Guard?
As with the Coast Guard, it depends on what you choose, what your job is, what your rate, your AFSC. When you pick your job, there may be only a finite number of places you go. Like mine, there was only one location. The no, not all for the specific fine point job I had. There was like one specific location you could go. I mean, and there was really no world that you could go to for that. I mean, they had different locations that you could do, like TDY and a couple of other things more, but yeah, for the most part, you were stuck. Whereas with the Coast Guard, it's similar. You can't go you can't go to as many places in certain jobs, so it's similar.
Well, what about for the choosing structure? How does that work in the Air Force versus like the Coast Guard?
It's similar. You get the what is it called, the wish
Dream
list,
sheet.
dream sheet, wish list. The Air Force calls it the wish list. But again, it comes down to needs of the service. If they need you somewhere, they will put you somewhere.
Is there a certain way in the Air Force versus Coast Guard that you um, can get these jobs? Like, do you have to excel, or is it like command based, or is it like what your rank is? Like, how does you competing with someone else for a specific job differ in the services?
So I know that the Air Force, they have it to where it's like based off of everything your command, like your command will give endorsements. Your volunteer work comes into play. Your everything you do, because of how competitive it is, they look at it and they will decide like where they want to put you. Now, I know that the Coast Guard, you get a little bit more like one-on-one time with the detailer to discuss your situation. But again, like always, needs of the service come first, always, even in the Coast Guard. But they're a little bit more personal in the Coast Guard, whereas in the Air Force, you never meet that guy. You never hear from them. They're the ones who decide where you go based off of what is on paper.
Now, what about for the types of jobs like in the Coast Guard? I know that if I'm an IT, but if I wanted to be a recruiter, I can go be a recruiter, or I can become a CC. I can there's different types of specialty jobs that are kind of unique that you can apply for. How does that work in the Air Force?
Same, it's the same way. Special duty, you can go be a recruiter. It's similar to what the Coast Guard does. You can step away from your job for a little bit and go do that. But with that, when you go, you got to maintain the knowledge base of what your actual job title is, because like for testing and all that, you still need to have that knowledge base. So you need to be on top of your game to the changes and everything with it. So it's very similar to what the Coast Guard does.
Okay, that's good to know. And what about for like conducive to family life? What were you married when you were in the Air Force as well? What is the
Yep.
difference in being married in the Air Force versus being married in the Coast Guard?
So I was married. I've been married in both, and I have been single in both now. So I can tell you there's a little bit of difference. Needs of the service came first for the Air Force. I mean, they were lenient towards your family, but they only went so far. You had to work very hard to maintain the structure of your family, and your spouse may have to take on a little bit more duty, if you will, at home to while you're in the Air Force. Like it varies from person to person. I know that some of my experiences, I was a little bit upset with how the Air Force dealt with it, but I was very understanding to this job demands your time. So you have to be willing to give up your family time to do the job because you signed on to be that military member. So a lot of the times with the Air Force, job came first. And it's similar with the Coast Guard. Job comes first, but as long as they have somebody to fill that role to to give you time off, they're a little bit more lenient to that, in my opinion.
And what about as far as morale benefits for like spouses, things that they do to benefit the family. Did you see any difference in that?
Um, that will no, there's no difference, but there is difference in the mentality of them taking advantage of that. I know that to any military spouse, I definitely recommend take advantage of those benefits. Like they are there to help, and they are so much fun. Um, you definitely need to get yourself out of the house and like push yourself to go to these things because they are very beneficial. I know that like there were days where I was just like, I'm tired. I don't want to do anything. But if you just force yourself a little bit to go to those things, you will really, truly enjoy them. And they give you so much more to work with and more opportunities to expand in not just like your career, but in your family life and have fun. So when I was in the Air Force, the morale was low because they didn't go to these events, and the events would just start failing left and right because they didn't have enough people going to them, and it was very sad to watch. I believe that the Coast Guard takes a little bit more pride in that, but again, it's dependent on where you are and the person.
Yeah, it really kind of comes down to the command and the
Uh,
types of people.
Oh, not just the command. It's the spouses and the military members themselves. Like I've seen it to where it's like people don't want to go to these events. They just want to go home, relax on the couch, and do nothing. And I find that a little sad that you don't want to try and get out in your community more. And please, I recommend to anybody, please do it. It's so much fun and so worth it.
With the Air Force, I imagine because you're the locations that you're going to be moving in, they put you. Do they typically only put you in government housing, or do you get civilian housing?
So if you're a single member and you're first starting out, you're going in the barracks. They need to fill those barracks. Coast Guard doesn't really have barracks because they don't have the funding to build their own like housing for the first term service members. So if you're a first termer and you're single, yeah, you're staying in the dorms. That is not a bad thing. To all you single members, take advantage of that. Put into savings, start saving because it's very important. I was one of those dumb brand new recruits who went in and I started doing what they call ghosting, where you maintain that dorm, but you use your own personal money and go buy an apartment without BAH. It's frowned upon, but they can't really yell at you for it.
Now, why do so many people do that? Why do so many people go ghosting?
Because they don't want, a big one is inspections. Like you have to maintain a clean environment in the barracks, and and I'm going to say kids because it is that mentality of you're still brand new, you're still a little bit immature, so you want that freedom to do whatever you want to do, and if you really want to relax, you can leave your bed a mess. But with that, if you start keeping that, it carries on to your home. So that way, when you have a home, it's clean. You want it to be clean. That comes into a health risk. I mean, I noticed it afterwards, like when I started growing up and realizing like, I don't want to leave my bed a mess. I don't want to leave my room a mess. I don't want bugs in my house. I don't want animals coming in because I left my chips out. It's just that mentality is very key to that.
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, you're not getting BH, you're not getting paid that much, and then you're using that money
Yep.
for housing. It's like, what are you living on?
Yeah, and then like you go and get your first car, and it's like the worst possible financial decisions that they make. And so I really say to you single members, take advantage of living in the dorms. It is really cool because one, you're right there. You have everything you need near you. You always have the opportunity to go out and do other things. So like you'll be able to purchase your first car and actually make payments. Don't ghost. It's like living with your parents and getting a steady paycheck. Don't do it.
Now, I mean, it's kind of a hard question probably to ask, and probably a little bit too broad. But for people that are considering joining a service, now that you have experience with both, and you're not biased because you obviously you've been in both. Now, what service would you recommend for people that are considering joining either like the Air Force or Coast Guard?
So with that, I always tell people it's really dependent upon what you want to do with your life. If you want to go to school, if you want that mentality, if you want that knowledge, I would say go to the Air Force. I mean, I really truly believe it because they will help you and push you to maintain that. But if you're not really sure and you're still like iffy on doing anything, but you know you want to do military service, you know you kind of want the benefits, and you know you want to serve your country, yeah, go Coast Guard. It's one of the, in my opinion, it's one of the more well-rounded, like balanced. It's less pressure. I like the Coast Guard. It is. I am the happiest I have ever been in the Coast Guard. But that's the mentality I hold. Now, I know people who are in the Air Force who say that no, the mentality of pushing to get better, to be better, is always better. So it's like putting that is one of the bigger things. So, like I said, I say it's dependent on the person, and you really need to know yourself and what you want to do. And then after telling them that, I will help them do either one.
Yeah, I think that we could keep on going on and on and on about different aspects of the Coast Guard and the boot camp and the benefits. Probably way too much for this single video, but I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna end it at this one, and I'm sure that we're gonna be getting lots of different comments. I'm sure that this video will do very well because it's just not talked about. So if you'd be open in a later, potentially future interview, maybe hitting on some of the questions that people have that I wasn't able to cover because there's just so many things that I'm not able to cover in this one video. Would you be open to that?
Oh, absolutely. I would love to come back and conversate more on this. Like I take a lot of pride in what I've done and what I am doing. So I definitely want to help other people out and give them the knowledge they need. So yeah, bring
Definitely.
forth those questions.
Okay, you've heard it from Kyle Miller. He IT2. He's been in the Air Force and the Coast Guard. This video we've just been talking about so many different things. Have talking about coming in and doing your 4 years, talking about your college experience, talking about boot camp and the benefits and the work life. There's a lot packed into this video that I think is just super invaluable. And I just thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to educate the military journeyman community. And do you have anything left to say before we close out this one?
Just that if you guys want, I'm always open to answering questions on my Twitch channel, R33 Sanator, Sanator. If you hit me up, I will definitely answer any questions you have if I'm online. Other than that, no.
Yeah, awesome. I'll include in the description box ways that you can connect with Kyle and see and talk with him on Skype. And obviously you can post your comments in the comment section. I'm sure that he'll be looking through this, and maybe we'll collect these questions and get another interview on here. But thank you so much again, Kyle, for taking the time. And until next time, military journeyman, peace out. Hope you guys liked this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. If you want to keep watching and you want to see the full series of this interview, check out right here or keep watching right here. Until next time, peace out.